Hello everyone and welcome to Fleet's Random Ramblings. Yeah, I hope you're having a good time. Yeah, um 3rd of January 2025. Yeah, that's where we are. I mean it's weird actually to think about it. I mean, first ramblings of the year and it's a catch-up ramblings. That's no bad thing in and of itself. Um going to be working through as much. So basically the plan is, well, you all know the drill. Catch-up ramblings goes until it's either 3 hours long, or we get through all of the unanswered questions. So, without further ado, let's get the Discord rambling audience in, and we can get going. So, right, so let me have the document open somewhere. Here we are. Right, so where were we? So we did that. I know I answered that one. So did that. Oh wait, no, it's 63. What, I'm 162. Oh wow, I'm 162. Wow, I really am ahead of myself. There we go. So we did that one. I'm just trying to make sure I know where I am. Keeping track of what I have and haven't said. Okay, so let me just see who has tuned in. So we do a quick whip round and say hello. Hello, Lion. Hello, Space. Hello, nope, sorry, not Space. I was going to say Space Doc. No, but that's Spock. Hello, your typical gunnery officer. On YouTube, let's see who we've got. Hello, Ramal. I suppose without much further ado and fanfare, well, I suppose we have to get cracking, don't we? First question. If you were to drop an X turret on Vanguard, what can you put in its place? Oh no, I did this one already. Oh no, I did most of these actually. Okay. What were the battlecruiser designs of the Marine Nationale? If they were to go up against the RN and German battlecruisers, how would they hold up? Well, the problem with the French battlecruiser designs is that there were a bunch of very, very early paper proposals for French battlecruisers. I believe there were two different styles of thinking. You're basically looking at a battlecruiser version of the Normandies, with basically increased length to enable them to go faster and more horsepower, obviously. That was one option. Fairly well protected for battlecruisers of the era. Actually, 10-inch thick belt armor. It's thicker than the British battlecruisers had, although the deck was a little bit thin. There were also some other proposals. Duranville had a few that he put forward. So again, one had 2 quad turrets. This would have been a cheaper design. Slightly smaller as well, and a little bit slower. But they were very... They were even more heavily protected, 11 inches of belt armor. The second design, again, was very similar, but that had 8 15-inch guns in 2 quad turrets. But the French didn't have a 15-inch gun, so Project B of Duranville is the least likely of the proposals to have been built. Since it's the least realistic. Both of Duranville's proposals are... Because of the way they are, I see them as less likely than the proposal put forward by Gilly. Or Gills, I should say. Well, it depends. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's spelled Gilles. Bear in mind, I'm just going off what I can find on Wikipedia. I don't know too much about... I've looked at my convoys on French battlecruisers a few times, and very, very little is actually in my convoys. I would have to go and do some real digging to find out much
early
more.
French battlecruiser designs.
Yeah. The one that's basically a stretched Normandy, I think, is the most likely. It requires the least design revision. It's also the one we know the most about. It's the one that got closest to being a finalized design.
Oh, we actually got a few other finalized designs ahead of time.
But
they were disregarded.
Duranville's designs didn't really get close to... They got... Like, he was working on them, but they didn't get close in... They didn't get as close to being finalized as the stretched Normandy did. It's not a bad ship, by all means. It's more thickly protected on the belt than the British ships are, but much weaker on the deck, which makes sense when you consider the French are, at this period, still vastly underestimating the ranges of battle. So they're thinking deck armor's not really something they need to factor into their designs, because they're not expecting to fight at a range where deck armor is a factor. Although deck armor would probably be worked into the design as it becomes clear, you know, going forward, like what they did with the Britannias. They're not bad ships, with 12 13.4-inch guns. They'd be up there in terms of firepower. Definitely more powerful than any German battlecruiser in service. And 2 knots faster than most German battlecruisers as well. Pretty well protected. Yeah, they'd be fairly competitive against the German ships. British ships is a bit more difficult to say, because the British obviously have 13.5-inch guns. You've got Renan and Repulse. Renan and Repulse, you probably wouldn't want to pick a fight with these ships. Yes, you've got 15-inch guns, but that is an awful lot of 13.4-inch shells coming back the other way every time that thing fires. And with the Renans as they are in World War I, even with their armory work, it's still not a position you really want to be in. But yeah, so they're not bad ships. I definitely give them better than even odds against any German battlecruiser. But against the British battlecruisers, it's close to an even fight. Next one requires Dr. Clark to be here, and he is not, so I have to move on. Answered that one as well. Could one honestly make an argument that the US is also following a limited policy of appeasement towards Japan from 36 to 41? Considering that they had numerous options where they could have escalated to outright war, the Panay incident springs to mind. Japanese ships bombing a clearly marked American and British set of gunboats. They could have quite easily, if they wanted to, escalated that to outright war. But they chose not to. They were trying to... First of all, they wanted to build up the US fleet again. They wanted to fill out any gaps in their capability they felt they had. For example, fleet boats, so the Gatos, Balaos, the things that came before them. They wanted to build up that strength. They wanted to get their new battleships into service, so the North Carolinas especially, but then of course South Dakotas as well. really let the advantage over the IGN begin to tell in a major way. But yes, to really just come back to the crux of the question, yes, considering what the US could have done, they were incredibly limiting in their aggression. I wouldn't call it appeasement, though. Appeasement... It's not like in Europe, where... Because Japan and China have been knocking seven bells out of each other since antiquity. And unlike in Europe, there's not the same sort of dynamic of this is where the borders lie. This is, we have powers have a vested interest in, not moving things around. Germany was an aggressive power in the last war, etc., etc. With Japan, it's not the same situation at all. Yes, Japan is invading China, but it's not... The US isn't appeasing them by letting them do it. It's just happening. Appeasement is a term that really only applies in this period to Germany, given they are being appeased. They are asking for things and being given them. Whereas Italy's invasion of Abyssinia and Japan's invasion of China are just them doing things. They're not being appeased by letting it happen. They're just doing it. Greetings, Timo. Nice to see you. What do you think would happen if you merged the Imperial 40k Blackwatch with the Battletech Blackwatch?
No. This is the one Fox has been asking for a while.
I have no idea.
Very interesting things. First of all, the beginnings of the Blackwatch you need to date back to the classic Highlanders of Scotland.
Oh no!
They are the most elite. Battle mech capable pilots across the entire Inner Sphere back during the height of the Star League. They have the best training, best equipment, and a fanatic loyalty to preserving terror. Combine this with 40k Deathwatch, she's actually referring to it there, you get something very scary because they are also fanatical. Keep in mind, the Blackwatch don't use grenades. They use satchel chargers as grenades. They are the elite of the elite and have capability for infantry assault, mechanized assault, and full battle mechs. If you combine this with the capability from the Deathwatch, you all of a sudden get significantly more powerful infantry weapons potentially available to them. They're all of a sudden, the Deathwatch now have battle mech support. That can be then upgraded with 40k grades of weaponry. Fully functioning AIs as needed, that integrate with the human mind, so they can be prayed around as principes. You get an incredibly powerful and amusing fighting force.
Ah, yes. One driver jet for Britt Alcroft. Yes, R.I.P. Britt Alcroft. But yeah, so the Hard Dragons answered that one. Why do you all share Admiral King's opinion about BT? Well, Admiral King just thought BT was stupid, period. We don't share that opinion. BT is an incredible...
To confirm, you have been marking these questions as answered, right?
Yes. BT... BT is an incredibly... He's not a very good wartime admiral. But he is an exceptional peacetime admiral. And an exceptional administrator. Like, he's not bad, and he's not a bad person per se. He's just not a good admiral. What if MacArthur became president? Unknown. That's a massive butterfly, and I'd have to go and do a deep character analysis on MacArthur to really have a crack at that one. And Yeah, it's very hard to know exactly what MacArthur would have done with the presidency. To be fair, Knight, you're not missing much. I'm just answering catch-up questions. Though apparently 8 people are watching me answer catch-up questions. It's going to be a fairly short one tonight. There's not too much to get through this evening. Which is nice for a change. Frees up the rest of my Friday for me. Which is nice every now and then. Opinions on the Eletco Paradropal Tank Destroyer SPG of the British. Interesting idea. Definitely a unique way to get mobile firepower to troops in the field. And definitely something that we see taken forward by a few different nations post-war. The Russian Air-57 I can think of as a spiritual successor to the Eletco. Things like the
M56
yeah,
comes to mind, yeah.
Yeah, M56 as well. And then of course you see the Soviets go even further with the Air-Su-85, which is basically a powerful 85mm armed assault gun, which is a really interesting vehicle that I really would like to talk about at some point. Yeah, it's the genesis of an idea. Well, if the turret weighs so much, what if we just drop the turret? Suddenly we have a power droppable tank. Was the Nuffield A39 Tortoise SPG a missed opportunity? It was a vehicle for which the design niche no longer existed when it entered service.
I absolutely adore the Tortoise.
Oh no, it's a fantastic vehicle.
So impractical and silly.
Yeah, like it's only viable in a world where you've gotten bogged down in front of the Siegfried line and you can't crack it with resisting
potentially,
armor.
Potentially, there is one other use of it, but it's niche, and that would be in the defensive role in the early Cold War. Because the Tortoise's gun will crack whatever the Soviets send.
No, it won't crack an IS-3.
Yes, it will.
It won't.
It will.
The 32-pounder won't.
Yeah, it will. If you look at the Sabo rounds they were looking at.
Yes, but that's
and also a 32-pounder will still crack an IS-3.
See, in testing it cracked at 3 consistently. Because the 32-pounder is...
She said in testing, the 32-pounder was used against an IS-3 and cracked it consistently.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
It's normal round.
There you go.
Of real life wasn't the limp dick castrated version you see in War Thunder.
The 32-pounder is actually an we know that's not what you're referring to, but that's the common perception of it. I don't think she's saying that you know it as that.
It's
the common perception.
it's not. It wasn't that was really making me think. It's just the fact that the British didn't stick with the 32-pounder on their tanks. They designed
because it's too big.
It's fucking huge.
It is, yeah. But what the fuck is the 120mm on the Conqueror then?
Not as big internally.
You're joking, really?
But they have a simple logic.
Oh my
Because you're
god.
forgetting, 120 the Conqueror, when it comes out on Conqueror, is a brand new fucking gun.
No, I
the
know.
32-pounder, the tank version of a naval gun from World War I era.
Not quite, but it can trace its lineage there.
Yeah, well there you go then. More knowledge.
Well, it's based off of the 3.7-inch AA gun.
Yeah.
No, that's the 28-pounder.
Eh?
The 28-pounder is based off the 3.7-inch. The one we find on TOG and a couple of other vehicles. That are ideas.
TOG has 32.
No, TOG isn't 32, it's 28.
28-pounder.
Is it 28?
Yeah, 28.
It's the 28. And the 28-pounder is a direct development of the 3.7-inch AA gun.
Yeah.
Well, the 32-pounder is still a 3.7-inch gun.
Yeah, but it's a different 3.7-inch gun.
Okay.
But it's a different type of it.
Oh my god, try
Yeah,
it.
there were there were testing to it for. I know. I'm not sure. That looks more like a Centurion, but I know there was an attempt with Carnarvon to test it, and I know the more amusing one is the Churchill gun carrier was refit with a 32-pounder
Oh good
for
god,
testing.
what an awful idea.
Gets and giggles.
Well, it was purely for testing for let's see how the recoil works and such. Like, how does this actually perform in armored chassis style thing?
Okay.
So, how fast can we get a Churchill gun carrier to go backwards?
Not very fast is the answer.
Okay, so 42.
Good recall
getting-
happening there.
Maximus,
Oh,
unfortunately, no matter how many leaks you give War Thunder for British stuff, they'll never make it better.
Okay.
Because War Thunder hates British stuff.
Next question. 10 Abrams, 10 Challenger 2s, 10 Leopard 2A7s, and K2 Black Panthers versus 1,000 World War II German tanks comprising Tiger 2, Panther 1, Panther, Tiger 1, and Panther 4. Who wins and why? Let me just say
How
that,
far away do they start?
Yeah, well, let me just say first things first. Assuming an open field engagement, let me just put it this way: the only way they were going to win is if the modern tanks didn't have enough ammunition. And I just did a quick count up. A single Abrams alone carries 40 rounds. 10 of them carry 420 rounds. Carry 400 rounds. The 10 Abrams alone are looking to be able to kill that many vehicles. And then you've got the Challenger 2, the Leopards, and the K2s, and suddenly you're like, yeah, I'm sorry, at that point. No. It's just... Even getting behind the Western MBTs isn't really going to help them, because they're
To
functioning...
be fair, Gunner Officer, I don't think it matters the 105 or the 120.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
they're still going through.
yeah, like to be blunt, if you're not a Tiger 2 with the long 88, the modern MBTs are immune.
The 105 might be able to carry more ammo, but you don't really need to worry about that.
Yeah,
You've effectively got what?
Look, it's not a case
You've
of...
got 40
Hey.
You've got 40 modern battle tanks.
Dragon, the World War II tanks can win if the main battle tanks are equipped with nothing but smoke rounds.
yeah, that's
Potentially, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, the
Gunner
MBTs...
Officer,
No.
Gunner Officer, technically, yes, you do have to worry about ammo if you've got 1,000 tanks coming at you. But as just mentioned there, the Abrams alone carry 400 rounds.
Between the 10 of them.
Now, if we just assume that all of the others carry 40 rounds of ammunition each, which they have, most I think actually potentially have a few more or less. But either way, you've then got 40 tanks with 400. That is a lot of ammo.
Like, you've got...
That's like 16,000 rounds potentially.
Hang on, let me just check. This
Well,
is...
1600 like
let me just check. Yes, 1,600 rounds. That's...
Yeah.
That means you've got spares if you miss. So, it's... Yeah. This is just a kill. And if
But
you
again,
are...
the first round hit probability is through the roof on something like a Tiger.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue might be...
They're functionally immune to the vehicles from all angles, sides and rear as well.
Run, if it's in an urban city, then they might have more
Ammo
issues.
load anti-infantry? How much is the ammo load anti-infantry? Because a 120 HG isn't guaranteed to knock out a Tiger or a Panther.
Well, yeah.
Tigers and Panthers,
You
maybe
could
not,
probably
but others, yeah.
mission kill a few.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like, this is why that 600 extra rounds matter. Because that means
The British,
that
on
you
the other
can-
hand, the British will find it amusing because our
All their rounds work.
Oh, you mean the
Yeah.
Hesh?
Yeah, all our rounds
Oh,
work.
goody.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, Foxo. Foxo, it doesn't matter. We've got 600 extra rounds that we don't need, and we can just say they're the anti-infantry ones. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think
You
the
just-
biggest problem
you're
is
gonna
actually
die.
your...
They're gonna die.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest problem is because your loaders are going to be wet puddles on the floor by the end of it. Because the amount of rounds they're going to have to keep slinging into their gun.
Well, no,
at an
because
alarming rate.
well, no. Thing is, bear in mind, given how this battle may play out, if I'm assuming, I'm just gonna say open field because anything else just adds too many variables to really deal with. If it's an open field engagement, you're gonna have acquire target, shoot. Your loader's not gonna work through. Yeah, it's gonna tire the loaders out eventually, but not so much that it's not gonna be able to do their job. It's gonna be over in about an hour, if that.
Well, if it's going to be over in about an hour, they are going to, it's that rate, sustaining that rate of fire. Like think,
It's not gonna be that fast a rate of fire because, to be fair, it's gonna be acquire target, shoot, reload. Like it's not. It doesn't have to be a stupid rate of fire because you don't have to. Because getting the first round off and to be a hit matters more than rapidly firing because you are not at risk of being killed by return fire.
You are?
No, you're not.
You can certainly
You
probably
are?
get mission
No,
kills by it.
Foxo.
Right.
Foxo. there's
AMC
no-
is saying, or Brendan Lutton is saying, it is in a heavily urbanized city. Then that would vastly change the situation.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Wait,
And then you just sort of box it in with 4
Foxo-
tigers on each side,
Foxo-
and it just.
Foxo-
hear me out. Hear me out. One of my battle tanks, when hit by high explosive, are still at risk at falling.
But yes.
And they do have points.
Yes.
Actually,
but-
there's another problem with even that Foxo. Sheer
Honestly-
concussive blast.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun being in one of those, being smacked by 88 HE.
Go on,
Yeah,
Foxo.
and it's like trauma from repeated blobs impacting tanks, even from stuff like RPGs.
Oh, I'm sorry. If it's in a heavily urbanized city, then I'm sorry. The calculus completely reverses, and the 40 modern tanks get killed instantly, because it's like that. Like from the sides and rear, you can quite easily get through the armor of modern main battle tanks with guns of that era with AP. It's just because of how front focused a lot of our vehicles are, with the weapon systems we now have to deal with, the sides and rear of main battle tanks by necessity have gotten a little bit... Because you can't... It's not like the Second World War where you can armor the sides of a heavy tank to resist smaller tank guns that aren't the absolute meanest things you're going to fight. It's... No. If you... The only thing that might possibly survive being hit by an opposing round is the front of the vehicle. So why bother, apart from maybe autocannon round protection against anything other than that?
No. Just like the Challenger 2 is protected from most anti-tank missiles on the side.
That can't be true.
Why?
It is.
What do you think the massive composite blocks are for?
Well, that's
Remember, Flick, we have
that's-
seen them take modern ATGM to the
that's
side.
not the tank itself. That's the composite armor
But
package.
that's part of the tank.
Yes, but that's not going to stop solid shot AP, is it?
It does.
Composite will, yeah. Modern
Yeah,
composite
it does.
will.
And this
Well,
is
That's kind of the
composite-
point of modern composite. To
and
defeat
this is,
kinetic.
and this is why the chieftain was supposed to be here for this one, because I am not a tank expert.
Then just move on.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
knowledge
move
base,
on, please.
my knowledge
We've
base
gone-
is,
I think we've talked too much about this very silly question.
Yeah.
Yes, it is a very silly question.
Sorry, but modern equipment is a lot better than 80-year-old equipment. What a surprise. Sorry.
What modern vehicle would be the most terrifying for Axis forces to face in World War II? Oh, that's really...
B-52.
Yeah, honestly. If we're talking air
What?
vehicles. Yeah,
B-52.
yeah, it's just good.
Or Tornado, actually. Tornado,
like,
probably.
any
That'll
modern,
just go thump, boom.
honestly, it's any modern bomber, because it just
Yeah.
flattens everything in a fight. Like, the war's over, and that's even without it carrying atomic weapons. If it's a ground vehicle, then I'm sorry, the most terrifying thing for them to face is probably a Bradley. Because
No.
because MBTs are nice and all, but the Bradley can kill anything the Axis have. They can see whatever they have long before it's seen, and carry infantry. Yes, it's not tooled up for World War II infantry squad tactics, but I'm sure it can handle recon sections, and the Allies can adapt, I'm perfectly sure.
You're missing two vehicles and
You've cut out Foxo.
much on the scarier factor. The Flak Panzer Gepard.
That's true.
The problem is it's a...
Like,
yeah.
But you see that turret swing round, even as a modern soldier, and then see unleash that burst of 30 mil or 35 mil.
Yeah,
You're shitting your pants.
No, I get that.
And that
but
will
it's-
go through most of the tanks of that era.
Yes, but it's not really a useful... It's not really something that you want in a frontline combat engagement, even during the Second World War. The Bradley has a chance to survive a decent amount of the battlefield threats it's likely to face. The Gepard explodes when you sneeze at it, even with World War II equipment.
I don't. Then why are they part of frontline units in the modern day?
They are part of frontline units, Foxo, but only in idiot takes them into hot ground-on-ground combat. If it
So
gets
Ukraine.
they aren't in
So the Ukraine-
they aren't in ground-on-ground combat in Ukraine. They're used as anti-aircraft guns, which it's their job.
They'll also be used in attack rolls if needed. Like,
Well, yeah, but Ukraine's desperate. There's a difference. You wouldn't do that.
but
normally.
on the other hand, if you've got these guns that will shred any infantry, tank, or plane it comes across, they very quickly might become a front roll unit.
Yes, but it's just this is a really
Also,
bad way to think.
the
Stop
warrior's
thinking
gun being
like it.
unstabilized isn't really that much of a concern.
Also, I
like-
wasn't talking about the warrior. I said,
No, it's gunnery officers mentioned it.
Yeah.
I'm referring to the chat that's going on.
oh yeah, like yeah, warrior. Yeah, warrior is just
Warrior would still do very well.
Yeah, so
Arguably,
in case of-
arguably better for ease of maintenance.
Yeah, warrior would be
Yeah,
a good
but-
shout as well.
the question was, what would be the most effective? It would be
Those
what would
bits
be
are
the most.
I would, yeah, but you would assume you would assume effective would also work into that as well.
No. So,
Right.
no, stuff does not have to be effective to be terrifying.
Hmm.
The IS-3 was terrifying, but it was awful.
Terrifying to inspire fear. Where does effectivity come into that?
You have to, you have to, you have to
By
at least.
demolish, like that's what Tigers was so scary because it was.
Like you can't be
This-
terrifying
It
without
was,
being
you
effective.
know, at least. Yeah.
Yeah,
Can?
it's not right. You can just
Yeah.
through
No, you can as well.
presence. But
Yeah, I'm
if
fine.
it's effective and terrifying, then it's even better.
Yeah, Fleet, I terrify the fuck out of people. And I'm tiny, and I'm tiny, and I'm 5'5". I still scare the shit out of people.
Like, technically speaking, if it's just purely being scary to the enemy, it could potentially work.
I suppose. I just personally think I'd rather have. I'd rather have why are all our vehicles disappearing than it's this rumored thing called a Bradley that kills you before you even see it, rather than a Gepard which has to get really.
They don't have to get that
Yeah.
close.
I can't hear that close. Fleet, the fire control system on a Gepard run rings around the Bradley.
And it's guns with higher velocity and better rounds.
I wasn't
So
talking
they actually
about
could
the Bradley's
the Gepard
25mm gun. That's not the thing that's terrifying about it. It's its optics and the tow missiles.
I would far rather have the autocannons of the Gepard than the tow missiles and the optics.
I wouldn't.
Nuclear launch explosions are what a soldier in the time period expects. Some motherfucker to show with two extremely rapid fire autocannons isn't expected.
I think we just have different thought processes.
Yep. Next question,
Oh.
please.
Yep, I agree.
I think there's
Oh,
more
moving
Next
on.
question, please.
Moving on.
Thoughts on pack howitzers like the 75mm pack howitzer M1 or M116? Should we bring back small artillery pieces like this? Bring back. They never left.
Mortars exist?
Well,
Question?
The
Well, no.
BL119.
Yeah, like the light gun, the US 105mm howitzer, the Italian light howitzer. They exist. It's just they're 105mm pieces now because that's how
Yeah.
much
And also,
Metallurgy?
thank you. Metallurgy has advanced so much that you can get 105s that, and also the ability to move things has advanced so much that you can get
Like
pack
helicopters.
howitzers. Yeah, you can get pack howitzers that are 105s now, and it's
You
just
don't,
fine.
you don't need a howitzer that can be carried by people because you can use the big flying things to move them for you.
And heck, even the 105s nowadays you can move by blokes.
I mean, it wouldn't be fun, but
No,
you
but
could
you can
do
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, to
Or
be fair,
strap it behind a Humvee or something and bomb
for,
it along. That's
for
much
most
easier.
armies that don't use pack howitzers, the 105mm mortar exists. It's heavy. There's a reason why a lot of nations operate heavy mortar but no towed artillery, and instead just jump from the 105mm mortar to like a 120 or that heavy mortar straight to SPG. Because they don't need anything in that middle ground area.
105mm SPGs exist for a reason.
Also, the gunner
And
also
if
point
you-
out there is like the very lightweight, like stuff like the L118, which
Yeah.
is basically being wheeled around.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's
saying.
literally
exactly.
what me and Chair were talking
what we
about.
were talking
yeah,
about.
that's literally
Gunner-
what
yeah, Just going off what gunner officers are saying.
Oh, Brandon.
but
Yeah. Okay. So
You
what's?
But if it was 175 shooting at it, just take that rock hill anti-tank weapon you've got and lob it at the bunker.
Yes, if it's too hard to kill with a howitzer, yeah, you can use an anti-tank weapon.
Yeah.
Look at this N-Law or this javelin.
Look at this N-Law. Whoosh! I think about it every day.
I remember reading like 70% of anti-tank weapon use is not against tanks or vehicles.
No, it's against hardened structures.
Because you have a pack howitzer at home. It's called a Carl Gustav.
Yes,
that too as well. Yeah,
I mean, the Carl Gustav is just funny because it has numerous rounds for it. It's a recoilless rifle. There are numerous rounds you can put through that barrel.
Yeah, or just an RPG, like the RPG. Different...
Oh yeah, the RPG has so many different warheads you can put on it. It's great. It's why the Russians still build RPGs, because they're just useful. Even if you can't use them to blow up tanks, you can use them to do other things. It's a great way to deliver warheads to foreheads cheaply.
The pack howitzer has been made obsolete either. It does the same job after.
The pack howitzer isn't obsolete. It's just it's a choice nations make. They either go for like it's a nice option for certain nations.
It's a very niche thing.
Yes,
why
it is.
It's mainly an airborne thing.
Yeah.
Where those folks have to travel lighter, they can't carry around typical stuff.
Yeah, but it's also formations that need the reach of an artillery piece, not a mortar or.
But they tend to go for SPGs because it's a heavy formation. You've already got vehicles.
Yeah.
Mortar on a fucking BTR.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Whereas for, let's say, an airborne division, you might have a few Land Rovers that drop out of the aircraft with you, and then and then you can tow a gun behind them. Yeah, job done, and you've got mobile artillery that you can throw out the back of a plane.
Or at you can start to a pin scout.
Probably, yeah, but probably with the sound of whee as it goes out the back of the plane. Favorite
pack howitzers are just mostly irrelevant nowadays, aside from niche use.
That's what we literally that's what we said. Yeah, that's what we said.
Right.
Instead of
going in circles,
new question.
Instead of you two keep going in circles, do you want to move on?
Yeah, we did this favorite Azure Lane artist. Don't have one.
Don't really have an opinion.
Wow.
Actually,
wow, me and Dragon Anderson. Wow. Okay, that was.
Well, to be honest, I don't really look at the artists that much because usually most of the artist stuff is locked behind Twitter, and I can hardly find them in general. And honestly, I don't use Twitter. I don't use any of the other. I just look to see what the art in the game, so I wouldn't be able to give you an actual thing on that.
Yeah.
Without trying to go through every single bloody artist, because some have retired, some haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fox, have you got an opinion on that, or can we get on to the next question?
Look, there's just one artist that does really good shenanigans. Artist that's called Easy.
But
that's not official stuff.
It's the
Yep. Their name is literally 12 Their name is 12 E's and then a Z at the end.
Oh.
Moving on.
Anyway, so next question.
Yeah, but Pixiv also had problems, but Maximus.
If you were to design a NATO Cold War era missile cruiser as a committee made of the speakers, what would you come up with? Budget, blank, limitation, Baltimax. Baltimax?
I don't even know what it means by Baltimax.
I don't either.
Take X turret off Belfast.
Well, I suppose we have to go by era. So for the so for the 1950s, honestly, chairs not far off the money. It's the experimental era. You take an existing cruiser and you replace either all of its rear battery if it's a smaller cruiser, or all of its, or one of its turrets if it's a larger cruiser, with a missile launch system for a dual-purpose missile like Terrier or Talos, etc. If we're in the 60s, this is the era when you really start considering full missile cruisers. So again, given that we are designing for NATO, you're really looking at the US here. So again, there's something like a purpose-built Albany class, or one of the. We have US missile cruisers. Like, just go with them. The late 60s, you basically go, ah yes, Long Beach exists. For the 70s, you basically go, ah yes, the Virginia class exists. And then for the 80s, you go, ah yes, the cruiser proposals for the Tychos exist. You know, the ones that the Tychos were supposed to be the destroyers for, but then they decided, oh, we're not building them, the Tychos are now cruisers.
Gunner Officer does have a good point. Every ship you've listed here has been a US cruiser, which all of these are very intensive manpower-wise.
Yes.
This is a NATO thing, not just a US. Most nations in NATO won't want this because they're too manpower intensive.
Well, don't build cruisers.
Yeah, like, destroyers exist. Like, the problem is, you're asking for a missile cruiser. The reason US...
Nations don't necessarily mind cruisers, but the US ones are overly intensive.
No, they are not, because they are missile cruisers. It's not to do with the fact they're US ships. They are missile cruisers. Cruisers! Not destroyers.
Right.
Look at the Italian missile cruiser that they built. That thing bloody requires more men than its American equivalent does.
That's because, as I checked, it was a World War II cruiser they converted.
The point I'm making is you cannot meaningfully reduce the number of crew that you are going to have unless you create a ship that's a missile cruiser that's basically a destroyer with maybe an extra light missile mount on it than what it would otherwise have, and then call that a missile cruiser. It's not possible.
A fleet question.
Yes?
What difference between a cruiser and a destroyer in its period?
Exactly.
At that point, I basically just pull any of the nation's large missile destroyers, whatever wants to operate a cruiser, add an extra light missile launcher, slap a cruiser designation on it, and say, "There's your missile cruiser."
Make the hull a bit longer.
Yeah, that's it. It's just that simple. This is the problem. The only missile cruisers NATO operated were the few the Italians had, and the menagerie of US missile cruisers.
That's real. The NATO navies didn't fucking need them, so they didn't build them.
Exactly. Yep. This is the thing. This is why I defaulted to the US, because this whole question is based on a misnomer that
you need a missile cruiser.
You don't.
You don't. That's the misnomer.
I will propose a fun idea for if in the Royal Navy and we've got money like this. Question says.
Anyway, how far was Bristol off being a missile cruiser?
How far is what of being a missile cruiser?
Bristol.
Okay, Knight, you need to chill. Like, I'm not being a freedom boo. Like,
it can. To be fair, it really kind of did sound that way.
Like, the only NATO nation that needed or had missile cruisers was the United States of America. That's just the way it is. Saying facts. Saying facts.
France would like a word with you.
They didn't.
Yeah,
The French missile cruiser Colbert.
Yeah, but France, counterpoint, France wasn't in NATO when that thing was around. They were having their hissy fit in the 50s.
Yes, thank you.
No, this is 72. No, this is 72.
Is it 72? Oh, I think
this is 72 with a total crew that's still like 400 less than the American ones.
To be fair,
it's about 700 crew.
Really, she only has a single. That's weak missile cruiser armament, though. That's 4X sets and a single twin rail launcher. That's
it's all you need for a missile cruiser.
It's not the same as what we're talking about.
What do you class as? Yeah, well, then what do you class as a missile cruiser?
We're talking about an asset that has a
Let you form a battle group around without a carrier.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really do that with Colbert.
You wouldn't really do that around most missile cruisers you've mentioned, though. You still have them. You have them in a group with a. You have them in a group with carriers and other support. Like you don't base a group around purely it.
Any of the US cruisers you could.
Dragon, what did the Long Beaches did for a lot of their surface?
You mean Long Beach herself? Because there's only one.
To the case of Strong looks through air with a couple of destroyers and essentially a flotilla leader and go, you're not putting about enough for a carrier, but you're pissing us off.
That was the whole reason that US missile cruisers...
Like, I think you're really going off purely the American definitions of missile cruisers here.
Really
this is
not.
This is why Knight was kind of correct. You were going freeaboo.
No. No.
I'm sorry, but the French abortion of a missile cruiser.
Which is why different NATO countries will have different requirements, but they can still be classed as missile cruisers.
Yes, but the thing is, it said missile cruiser for NATO, which implies...
Doesn't mean it... Yeah, which means it would have to work for all NATO nations, so you're probably looking at something a bit smaller.
No, if
you're
it has
not
to
looking
work for all NATO nations, it has to be an American ship, because the Americans will accept nothing less. They won't accept a reduction in capability.
It doesn't have...
This is the problem,
Most of the Europe, though, will not accept an American one.
Exactly.
So who do you go... So then I would go off the ones that Europe would go with, because they're the ones who would most likely be looking at this.
Well, they wouldn't be anyway, because...
If they have got this capability, deem they need a missile cruiser, you're more than likely going to see some sort of joint NATO attempt. We see this with multiple other aspects of NATO. Don't see why they wouldn't do it for this. And notably, most of Europe's attempts for let's make a NATO vehicle don't involve the US.
I'm aware of that.
So what we're probably having is a European NATO ship made here.
Well, in that case, then you're looking at...
In that case,
I feel like we're going around in circles again.
At this point, you're not looking at a NATO vessel. You're looking at this is an Anglo-French project.
Yeah, and at that point...
Potentially also throw in the Italian and a couple others, yeah.
Well, no, by the time you're looking at...
It's the fucking talk. Because fucking... Without the Americans trying to get the French, the Brits, and the Italians to agree on anything, doesn't fucking work.
Yeah, because all three will want slightly different things. The British will want it to be small and cheap, the Italians will want it to have all the guns in the world, and the French will want something French, because of course they will.
Yeah, no, why do you think the Tornado predecessors didn't get off the ground until they kicked the French out? It wasn't because the French and the British got along.
Knight, I'm aware NATO is not just America. That's the whole...
You were kind of regarding it as the Americans were the only thing that matter.
Given that they had the most capable missile cruisers and...
But that's still not what the question was, though.
The problem with a missile cruiser is that it is the single Cold War platform that changes depending on what the nation in particular needs. If I'm designing a ship for NATO that can operate where mostly NATO operates, I could do far worse than American missile cruisers that can operate anywhere NATO operates. Yes, they might be manpower heavy, but they are incredibly capable platforms that can operate in any of the NATO operational theaters. So why wouldn't I go for them?
Because then you're not looking at NATO, you're looking at just the US again.
Did you listen to any of the words I just said?
Considering it's been the same stuff, you've kind of been just spewing repeatedly. Not really, honestly.
If I have an asset... Go on, Foxer.
Right.
Personally, I would
only 3 nations in NATO seriously considered it. And actually tried to go through the idea. The Americans, the French, and the British. The British and the Italian it's not worth talking about them. And it's a case
It
of
is, but even if it is an
the
old cruise,
Italians
it's
have
still
a
worth
unique
talking.
situation, and they need a unique ship for that situation. Which means that ship's not for NATO, that's the Mediterranean.
Which is part of NATO's concern.
But it's not the primary concern.
The ship doesn't really work outside of the Mediterranean threat environment. That's the thing.
Yeah. So, at this point, you're looking at the British, the French, and the Americans. We know that the British essentially went down the path of, we'll try and do our own thing, but we'll just copy the Americans when it comes to the ones that were designed around TDA-01, right? So they went with the American doctrine. The only one that's the exception is the French, and they built what, 1, 2 of them that weren't particularly good and didn't fit their needs, so they stopped doing it.
Knight is also bringing up a point here that does kind of break down one of your previous points, actually, of it doesn't work outside its designed operational theatre. Most nations' ships don't work very well outside their design theatre.
That's not the.
But
That's not the point.
But you're trying to shut down ships of, they don't work outside their designed operational theatre. It probably would work. Perhaps not as well, but it would work.
Knight, the reason this matters is not for what the ships end up doing, it's for the design proposals, the draft documentation, the planning stage. That's what matters.
Then you're probably looking for a ship that primarily works well in the North Sea and the Mediterranean.
And the North Atlantic.
And the North Atlantic, yeah.
The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's the primary theatre for them.
Which is where US missile cruisers were designed to excel. Again, this is just... Why do we need to adapt...
The Italian and the French ships didn't excel. They did quite badly, if I remember correctly.
They worked for what the nations required them, which is what most nations look at when trying to design something new. What works for said nation?
Yes, and this is... Yeah, you're quite right. But if we're having to design a NATO missile cruiser, we have to consider all nations. Now, what ships have proven they can operate even in areas that aren't NATO area responsibility? So, the Persian Gulf, off the coast of Vietnam, in areas that are even more extreme threat environments than the North Atlantic and the North Sea. US missile cruisers. Now, you might have a design that is crew trimmed down for other NATO partners, but there's no reason to have the base be anything other than a US missile cruiser design as it starts. What ends up being built for the various member states might be a different ship might have different weapon fits, crewing requirements, etc. But the DNA of the vessel will probably be a NATO missile cruiser.
Because remember now, it's much easier to use a ship designed for a high-threat environment in a low-threat environment than it is to use a ship designed for a low-threat environment in a high-threat environment.
Well, yes, Knight, the fact that the Brits in World War II were set into the Arctic Ocean and kicked the butt of Sharnos to the raging snowstorm has no bearing on the current conversation.
Well, admit, that one's a bit odd because
that's
the KGVs were designed to,
like
and also, the KGVs were. That was well within their mission profile.
Yeah, that's not really.
A lot of British ships, that was well within their mission profile.
Yeah, you need to.
Sorry. Only the K, right? Think about it. If I remember correctly, wasn't the KGVs ones that had their bow rebuilt?
Yes. KGVs, some of the KGVs had their
bow.
Yeah, the KGVs had their bows Atlanticized with a raised flare after the RN got rid of the very silly idea of having to fire over the bow at 0 degrees.
What, do you not want a gun? What do you want? No, it wasn't just 0 degrees, so you could get gun depression over the bow.
I know, it was just why? What circumstance? Just,
clearly feeds for when you're planning to board them.
It's just, I do love the RN showing the... just... You do sometimes love some of our incredibly harebrained decisions that we make in the Royal Navy. It's just...
I feel like we wandered a long way off the topic now.
Yeah, it's a good. That's a good place to move on. So we did that one. So put an A there. We did that already.
That one was answered.
Would Atlantic
This one's very
Conveyor be
simple.
a lawful war target during for a
Yes.
submarine? Yes, absolutely.
Just straight up, yes.
She's basically been converted into a quasi-amphibious landing ship and helicopter carrier. She is absolutely a legitimate target. Any of the requisition merchant ships are legitimate targets.
Yeah, but specifically, Atlantic Conveyor is carrying literally thousands of tons of ammunition.
Actually, I do think Leslie's really correct there. Go on, Foxer.
So the statutes around naval warfare, ammunition ships or ships that are provably carrying ammunition are military targets.
That's why they tried to claim that Lusitania was packed full of ammunition, because then she would be a
Also,
legitimate target.
Leslie's probably actually more correct. I agree on the previous one. Of that, a NATO missile cruiser is probably actually more based off Bristol enlarged with French systems, because that's more appealing to Europe.
Honestly, yeah, an enlarged HMS Bristol could also work. It would you'd have, like that is another route. Like I say, it's something I personally consider less likely, but that could also work. But again, it would
It's the best way you're getting it's one of the best ways you're going to try and get the British, the French, and the Italians to work together.
Well, to be fair, to be blunt,
and yes, I do know, but I know you also said it, Gunnery Officer. But Leslie also expanded it to more than just enlarged Type 82.
Yeah, to be fair, literally, what a NATO cruiser will be just picking a hull that's the DNA, and then each nation slaps their weapon systems and sensors onto it. That's the basic premise here. You have like basic compartments that can fit each nation's weapon systems, and then they go, okay, we're going to tweak the design here for this, and this. Boom. That's all a NATO missile cruiser is, but that's all that really needs to say about it. It's just picking the hull form. That's all, and maybe the engineering space. That's the same thing that stays. Everything else is basically up to the nations building them.
And whether it's nuclear or not.
Yeah, that as well. You probably have.
Honestly, you're probably not getting nuclear for most of Europe and NATO.
Yeah,
The British and the French work together if the French want nuclear.
Yeah, so
no,
like,
but they didn't. No, not for this. They didn't though.
No.
They did.
They wanted nuclear for big stuff, not this. Not a maybe 9,000 ton cruiser.
If I remember correctly, that they were trying to get nuclear power.
Their navy kept saying no. Anyway, moving back onward.
Yeah. So where were we? So we did the whole thing with Atlantic Conveyor. So we did that one. Would anything change if French foreign policy had won the Suez Crisis?
That's answered. That's literally got an answer to it. Yeah. Please, can you read? It has answered beneath it.
I don't remember us answering that one though.
Canberra.
Cyclic very quickly shut it down.
Yeah.
Oh, fair enough. So piggyback off my question from yesterday, taking 2 classes of 4 of the upscaled Scharnhorst to 9 15-inch guns. So assuming that 8...
16.5.
Yeah, 6 more. Assuming those appear with full stock, so that's 8 ships. 8 ships in full stock, so for World War II. What changes? Assuming the first is 37,000 tons at 31 knots, and the second class is 42,000 tons at 33 knots. Both classes have competent AA batteries.
The Grand Fleet makes a reappearance.
Well, if it's a week for World War II, the capital ships aren't getting paused, but that's still a problem for the Royal Navy because that's...
any ideas on pausing naval construction of any type is thrown out the window.
Yeah, the problem we've got, though, is that we cannot change... It's not like the ramblings we did on the High Seas Fleet appearing in January of 39.
Even at this point. Yeah, there's enough time for... There is enough time. You finish your current... Basically, what you do is you change the next year's build order.
Yeah. No, what I mean is...
All of a sudden, you're now laying down 4 Lion class.
Yeah, what I mean is the danger zone is a lot wider for the RN. And they've arrived... because they have... The Germans will have these cap... It's not like with the High Seas Fleet where the Germans also have to spend time building. There's crewing requirements to deal with, obviously, but the Germans have these ships now, and the British do not. It basically means that...
But the funny thing is the Kriegsmarine are crying in a corner.
Actually, they probably don't have the crew to man these ships.
No, not...
Each one of these ships takes over 1,000 crew. That means they effectively need 8,000 new sailors. Go on, Foxer.
They can't fuel them.
True.
Well,
I just say full stock, so they probably came at least one full set of fuel.
yeah, and I mean,
The historical Kriegsmarine was struggling in their early part of World War II.
oh no,
To keep Sean organizing our fuel.
well yes, but they've come with a full
Just
stock of
like the
fuel.
hair and the Luftwaffe for fuel.
Yes, but they've come
Also,
fully
this might be
stocked.
where High Command starts doing a bit of meddling of,
Yeah.
well, now we have a battle fleet that can fight the British. We'll divert fuel to it.
And the thing is, you can actually, like, in theory, you could, by using some of the ships as a covering force, you could send Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, because of how, well, not Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, you could send two of these ships with a bunch of tankers to go to Venezuela and get fuel and come back. The funny thing is, because of the amount of power you have, you can actually, and if they've got a full load of fuel, they could actually sortie in force as a 8-ship unit with a large cluster of German tankers shepherded in the middle of them. And I'm sorry, in 1939, the RN is the RN's like, okay, we can deal with this, we think, but if we deal with this, and we might win, and if we win, we're gonna win, but the damage to our fleet, the Italians are sitting right there, and they've got the Littorios. And...
this is still quite easily doable for them. You bring
it's
doable.
Oh, no, it's doable.
You get renowned
It's doable.
You then have most of the KGVs there as well. You have 3 of the 4.
Yeah, it's doable.
Like
but
they could quite easily put on force, throw in also some of the older ships as well. It is more than doable. Plus, also they said you say, oh, the RN might be worried. Oh no, the RN's going. Oh, please sail that fleet out in one go. Because let me finish, Fox first. You said, about them shepherding those oil ships. The RAF and the Royal Navy would like to have a word with you. Now that you're out on the open sea, we can sink those and make. What are you going to do about fuel? You have to spend your entire yearly fuel budget.
Just against my better dragon, the T-class, literally. I was born for this.
This is
there is the T-claw. Although I will point out this is me going, yes, a wild card option. But then again, this is Nazi Germany. They would do stupid stuff like this.
They probably wouldn't send all like that. Maybe
a bunch of slow-moving capital ships in a straight line protecting some
oil ship. Yeah.
Like heads.
Welcome to Torpedo Alley, ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, foosh.
As I said, you probably see the lions laid down very quickly and continue.
It's just
Eye filled with swordfish.
What do you mean, Bismarck?
People forget the Royal Navy have submarines.
Very good submarines.
I know. Bear in mind, I'm not forgetting. I wasn't saying this was a good idea. I'm just saying I can see the Nazi German government going, this is a brilliant idea because... And the Navy's going, no. But Hitler's going, go on, you can do this. You've got 4 modern capital ships. You can
do this, or I scrap them all.
and Raiders going,
by this point, he won't be saying scrap them all, but
it's just
Well, we scrap them all. It will be you do this now while you've got fuel, or you sit and pause the rest of the war because the Luftwaffe and the hair are ripping chunks out to you because you're not doing anything.
So, the final question, actually, which actually, about an hour. That's not too bad, actually, for a catch-up ramblings. If you, the panel, could go aboard any US supercarrier for an extended period of time, what would you each choose and why? Well, to be blunt about this, in the politest possible sense, apart from an update in systems, there's not really that anything special about one supercarrier to another. Yeah,
General Officer's right, you've missed one.
Yeah, the Gerald Off. No, I haven't.
Yes, you have.
Where?
Question 7.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have.
Where?
Rambling 64, Q7. What if Japan didn't have the treaty with Britain in World War I?
I didn't miss that. It wasn't answered.
But then you didn't update the document about that, though.
Yeah. And also that's setting. Well, I suppose you know what. It's a decent question to finish on. It's a decent. Oh, shut up, you crazy fox, and focus on driving. All right. I suppose this is a decent question to finish on, I guess, and it gives us time to actually explore this a little bit. This is the.
Also, in regards to the supercarrier one, none, thank you. I don't want to be on one.
Yeah, it's just they're all roughly the same. It's not. There's nothing really special. Oh look, it's a F-30. Oh look, it's aircraft. Oh look, I've gone to a different carrier. There's aircraft.
Okay, does it have to be an American carrier?
It says American supercarrier.
Yeah, it says US supercarrier. Where it's.
I'm sorry, but I would give my life to Johnny Silverhand, that French fucking carrier out of existence.
You all right over there, Foxo? You need a minute.
No, she suggests removing it from existence via the power of a small tactical nuke.
Oh bloody hell! Don't.
Look, I've got a melee weapon. I've got a revolver. Let me Johnny Silverhand her.
No, stop, please.
Do you think if you raised a Dutch flag, you could give them PTSD?
Hey, the Netherlands. What did you say?
I know that's primarily to the British, but I'm sure if you start doing that, yeah, no, she's more referring to the idea, Phoenix, of having a small tactical nuclear bomb, as in the thing from Cyberpunk, which Johnny Silverhand did, where he tactical nuked the tower and basically ran around with a knife and a revolver.
Sure. Anyway, moving on. So very swiftly, the final question that we're going to answer today. It's a doozy. What if Japan didn't have any kind of treaty with pre-World War I that wasn't aligned with any countries with the same type of government Japan had pre-World War II with the militarist in charge? When World War I breaks out, what if Japan stays neutral until at least 1917-18? And even worse, what if Japan joined the Central Powers to upset the Russians even more? Are we going to see a Pacific War break out with the US and Japan fighting in World War I? And what would the post-World War I like in the Pacific? Simply put, if Japan isn't aligned with the British, then Japan isn't staying neutral in World War One. They will likely declare war on the Germans, because that's who they were going to probably go and nick stuff off of anyway. And they will probably also start another Sino-Japanese war.
Why the hell not?
Because no one else is going to get involved and stop them. Because all of China's guarantors / people China has debt with are currently fighting a major war.
Well, I'd also say jumping on the back of the Chinese and the Germans is also easy. There's very little they can do about it in the Pacific. Whereas if you fight the British and the Americans, you're going to get your shit pushed in.
Yes.
Because the Japanese Navy is nowhere near strong enough at this point in time.
Nope.
If you're talking, for example, 1917, for example, is the year that Yamashiro, which is the second Fuso commission in March. You get the first IZ at the very end of the year.
Yeah.
So you basically have two 14-inch dreadnought battleships in mid-1917 and the four battle cruisers, and that's kind of it for dreadnought.
I mean, you've got the Kawachis and the Satsumas, but yeah.
Yay,
hexagons!
The Americans already have 14 dreadnought battleships by this point by themselves. Granted, 2 of those are South Carolinas, but if you consider what the Americans can spare, what the British can spare, you as Japan are just horribly outmatched.
Yeah, why would you? The only way Japan gets any part of Russia is if they dogpile on Russia saying, "Oh, we're helping in the civil war, guys, anti-communist." Japan, are you going to withdraw now that the Russian communists have won? No, we don't.
They just permanently be at war with the Soviets. Yeah.
I
think they would eventually get pushed out, but they could do that. I mean, that's just the route they could go.
That's
no peace with the communists.
Yeah, I mean, that's militarist Japan in a nutshell, ain't it? I mean, eventually they may have to. The communists may have to go, because Japan will have the end of the Trans-Siberian where all the supply depots are that the Russians would need for a war with Japan. So they just go. We can't fight a war in Siberia against the Japanese. That's not start like the Russian like the Soviets may have to go. Like the Soviets will go, yes, we'll not make peace with Japan, but we'll just freeze the conflict, and we'll go and deal with Poland and Europe, and then we'll come back with the European allies that we will definitely get after steamrolling Poland, and then we will crush the Japanese, and then they fail in Poland, and then they say, well, we're going to do it anyway, and they come back and like, oh, that's all of the fortifications. Oh, and what do you mean that the Japanese blew up the railway line? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, knowing the Soviets, they'll just inevitably end up however far east the Trans-Siberian Railway survives, they'll just start building up there, and eventually, when they feel they're ready for the Japanese, which, whenever that happens to be, who knows? I think the further you get in the 1930s, the worse the situation gets for the Japanese, especially if they're knee deep in China again. But
which at this point will be
the point to go.
Which at this point will be the third Sino-Japanese war.
Oh, God.
I will admit, it would be sad to see one of the great wonders of the modern world destroyed.
You mean the Trans-Siberian Railway?
Yeah. And the American Continental Railways and the Trans-Siberian, that's a fucking wonder of the modern world.
Well, I'd say,
I would imagine it would be rebuilt.
Yeah, well, the transcontinental railways are a dime a dozen in the US, but the Trans-Siberian is something truly special. Like there were like 20 of the bloody things. In fact, there are so many transcontinental railways, the US could afford to lose one when the Milwaukee Railroad abandoned their Pacific extension in the 70s.
Milwaukee Road.
Fuck you,
everyone else just suffers from skill issues.
Yeah,
what can we say?
Yeah, fuck you, Chicago and Northwestern Railroad Company.
Just the fact that these railroads blow through fucking mountains.
Oh yeah, like the Trans-Siberian is incredibly amazing. But to be fair, when I say blow up the railway, they're just like, oh, we're just gonna blow up the bit to the west of our front lines, when you were fighting in Poland, and then we're gonna withdraw back to our way. They're not blowing up the railway entirely. They're just, yeah, the rails are gone. Like the embankments will still be there, but the tracks are kill.
It's stuff like ripping down the bridges. Ripping down the viaduct.
The only real place the Japanese can do real permanent damage is the area to the west and around Lake Baikal. But
yeah, there's some really nice viaducts around there.
But I think that's much further west than the Japanese would actually end up going.
I don't know. They got most of the way to Mongolia.
I kind of don't think they'd have the logistics to manage that. I mean, you look
this is World War I Japan, not World War II Japan, which makes it even less likely they go that far west.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you gotta. I mean, I think it's worth bearing in mind that just the IJA just does not have really the manpower and mass to effectively fight a grinding war of attrition with the Soviets or Russians. I mean, we can see how that played out in the Russo-Japanese War on land. But where the Japanese were at some point were going to be exhausted.
Yeah.
I don't rate their chances very highly when the Soviets do decide to come back.
Oh yeah, like it's gonna be. Yes. Excuse me 1 second.
And he was never heard from again.
Yep. Anyway.
I mean, to be fair, like, the only bit of railways I appreciate are some of the viaducts that were built on them. Because, good God, they are beautiful. I used to live near one in Yorkshire, and it was like 200 meters across. And you would drive under it. They built under it. It was amazing. Anyway, does chat want to start asking questions?
Well, I don't think that's what the option is, I'm afraid, in this, because this is a catch-up, not a question Anthony won.
And while we're waiting for Flint, might as well.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure he's missed some questions anyway, but because he hasn't gone far enough back, but oh well.
And let's see if we can Shanghai him into continuing Rambo.
Probably not happening. Remember, he wanted to continue the Hoi this evening. Well, Europe is now basically fully under German control, and the Germans have solidified their economy. That's not going to end well.
Oh, like he's joking about getting me tonight, right?
No, he said this. Remember, he said this at the other day. Your economy is ludicrous, Syndicalist, because we've seen you've got like 5 times my industry because you've just conquered everything and then got rid of your debuffs.
Oh,
yes,
boy.
it was. You were the one who chose to invade.
Boys, this operation canned good, isn't it? Oh yes, you see, it was the Poles that attacked us. We only invaded them in self-defense, along with the Soviets.
Yeah, right. Admittedly, this did happen twice in them. Right. So Austria, what happened initially is Austria refused to Anschluss, so the Germans invaded them, and then Hungary made an agreement with them to basically form the Austro-Hungarian Empire again. So all of Austria just became Hungarian, and they formed the Twin Duchies.
Oh joy.
So then the Germans decided, right, we'll go for the Sudetenland next. And the French and various versions of the Entente decided, you know what, no, we're going to stand up for them. The Germans invade, and then the war discarded. After Germany then gets most of Czechoslovakia, all of a sudden, Czechoslovakia goes, you know, maybe we'll join the Austro-Hungarians at this point and become a third member of their power, kicking the Germans out again. Twice, halfway through invasions, that they've pulled the card of held up, nope, can't invade us, we're legally a different country now. Yep, then they invaded Hungary, Poland,
the Germans. History repeats.
Yeah, then they went after Hungary and Poland and France. Basically, the only bits in Europe that are still not German is Spain, who's managed to get out of the Civil War, Italy, who keeps collapsing over and over again, and
how
Britain.
did France fall if Germany did manage to get absolutely none of the
because they just conquered it, and then just sent all their forces to run over the French.
Oh, so they did conquer it. Okay, so I missed
They eventually they conquered it. They then went back in a second time later.
And what nobody knows.
No, Greece has fell a couple of times. Going off, so Romania was eaten by the Germans.
God.
It's always case that the last bastion that's not German is Scandinavia. I've already had to give up my
Sorry, that was real history. Sorry,
Britain still stands, but yeah.
No offense for rifling you for cities, do you really?
You literally ate 4 other countries, yes. And they're technically 7 if you include the others.
But it's Scandinavia.
But Scandinavia has a far more powerful focus tree than the UK does. Because they decided the Germans needed to have a buffed focus tree again. Even though Britain has needed a new focus tree, basically since they got it. The German tree was perfectly acceptable, but no, the Commonwealth, the people who got the first DLC, which means has the least amount of content. No, you can't have anything. Oh, what's that? Oh, sorry, we'll need to go and give stuff to Afghanistan and Iran over giving you stuff.
Afghanistan has stuff in Hoi.
The next DLC is giving stuff to Afghanistan and
I literally
Iran,
go away for 5
minutes
to make a phone to receive a phone call, and you get up on your soapbox about the bloody Brits in Hoi 4.
Well, I'm sorry, we have to keep them entertained somehow about talking about what's been going on in the Hoi game.
Unfortunately, Dragon refused to do the helicopter dials, so I got to talk about Hoi 4 instead.
Honestly, agreed, Knight. Hoi is kind of like that. It's a fun game at times, but it is got a lot of problems.
I mean,
yes, I agree.
I don't think Hoi is just so. I don't think Hoi is BS.
Too old.
I think that's a little bit of an. I think that's.
I actually think he's not actually wrong there. Like Hoi is pretty much categorically a bad game, considering 90% of its content's locked behind DLC.
That's not. That's.
And the base and what is there of the base game is pretty mediocre.
I mean,
See, when was the time you played Unmodded Hoi 4?
With no DLC.
Yeah, fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we modded to make it bearable. It's a lot like Fallout New Vegas nowadays. It has to be modded to make it work.
Yeah, but Moo, have you considered the fact that saying you can play Hoi 4 on your resume is as good as a IR degree from Yale?
Yeah, as I want to keep in mind, all of the designers for vehicles and such is locked behind DLC. Previously, and thank Kalos they integrated this as a base game. Previously, stuff like Lend-Lease was a DLC. For most of the game's life, even the most basic of game mechanics were locked behind DLC. The only reason they've integrated in the base game now is so they can resell you the content.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem with the Hearts of Iron series is looking at Hearts of Iron 4, because it's one I'm most familiar with, is just the DLC content. Essentially, what they do is it boils down to more, focuses is the interaction with how you do things in the world, right? And continuously reforming or adding detail to parts of the game that probably don't need that much detail and probably doesn't add much to what it's supposed to be. Like having a thing to design specific land vehicles, tanks, armored cars and such, plusing, minusing armor and such. It's just kind of silly level of granular detail. They really aren't good at doing naval stuff like naval combat, and I think it's also it suffers from the problem of it's simultaneously trying to be a historical simulator of World War II and also a sandbox where you can do other things, which is great, except the problem is if you're trying to build the game to make World War II happen, you have to do very specific things to make sure things progress the way they do. For example, massively buffing Germany versus most other powers, making sure that if they do a historical focus, they can become a steamroller. But then, you also have to add in every other faction getting these completely crazy DLC to focus paths that take them into random crazy directions, right? And it's the entire thing. It just becomes kind of insane, whether you have it railroaded on the World War II path or free to do whatever the hell you want. I think the game really suffers identity crisis because it's trying to do both of those, and I don't think it really does anything in particularly very well. There's been having played it for a long time until the last 2 years, there's definitely been DLCs I thought were excellent additions, and there's a lot that I think is just kind of excess crap that just didn't need to be there, but it doesn't really add to the game. For example, the supply chain changes I thought in the trains, I thought that was actually a really good move because it changed the way you would actually fight on the map. But I don't know that, say, a lot of the stuff about designing the individual vehicles was necessarily that good of an addition for the type of game it was.
It allows a lot of fun because the designers are some of the most enjoyed parts by the community. Something which I also despise is visual DLC means you can't. So in a multiplayer game, so if the host has the 2 visual DLCs where it's literally purely visual assets, I can't actually go in single player and take a look at it because I don't own those visual DLC. I own all the content, just not the actual. Oh, you get different icons in your thing for this player alone.
Yeah.
I would.
That's a whole other issue.
Right, I wouldn't say it's designed to minimize the Holocaust. It doesn't really. It doesn't touch. I will say it doesn't touch on it, but that's
not.
It's not the point. Yeah.
It's an implicit omission, so it can do the fun sandbox and let players power trip.
Also, remember, Hoi 4 came out at a point in time where Germany really didn't like that.
Yeah,
so they wouldn't have been able to sell it in Germany at the time.
Yeah, Hoi 4's purpose is not designed to minimize the Holocaust. That's just not the case.
But at the time, Germany literally had bans on most of the content. I know this is what happened to a lot of games at the time. I've spoke to Germans where they said, "Yeah, no, we're not allowed this." Back in 2016. Keep in mind, Hoi originally came out back in 2016.
Yeah,
But it's also the case that devs have come out and said they're not going to do the Holocaust or the Holodomor or any of the big genocides because they wouldn't be able to do it justice.
Yeah, like that's like either
They're not going to do it properly. They're not going to do it at all.
yeah, like I mean that's a very excellent point. Like either you do that respectfully and properly, or you don't include it. And I think they made the right choice. Like I don't. I really do have an issue.
But Hoi4's not just about Nazi Germany, though.
Yeah,
so
you can't really say that though. It's built around Nazi Germany as like the main faction that actually puts. Look, if any Hoi4 game, whatever the German players' action are, decides how that game is going to go. They get the ball rolling. It's why they have to get all the strongest buffs for building up industry magically overnight, because otherwise the game cannot progress properly. I think you can't really focus on recognizing that it just revolves around Nazi Germany.
Phoenix, I wouldn't actually say that, because I would say for at least the past 4 years, other nations actually had some potential better bonuses.
Yeah, I would also
we're talking about how many years of games released, or how many DLCs of insane world history stuff that allows you to diverge from that kind of focus. But if you're playing the historical World War II focus, it still absolutely revolves around Germany. Because other factions are designed to, France is designed to be able to fall the way it does historically.
And how would you integrate?
But then at that point, you don't have the game then.
Sure.
So,
I mean, I think to a certain degree, it is impossible to really touch on World War II without running into these kinds of problems, right? Because either you're accepting you're just going to be a map painter, or if you actually want to give it the historical flavoring, then you kind of have to touch on the reality of what was being done. Like you can do things like Nanking Falls. Here is a text blurb what happens in Nanking, or doing if you are playing as explicitly not, because you can obviously change if you're doing all history, you can change what faction you're playing as Germany. But let's say if you're continuing through as Nazi Germany with Hitler in charge and all that, you can do things such as what year is it? Okay, does Germany control this tile? Okay, news blurb about Holocaust event in this part of Germany. Right? You can use, if you want to make an educational game that touches on the Holocaust, you can be upfront about what is actually happening on the ground as Germany.
But I will also say there's a difference between actively trying to minimize it, and not really touching upon it.
You are implicitly by not touching on it at all, because you are running around as Nazi Germany doing all these things. It's kind of hard.
The Soviet purges are there as a gameplay mechanic, though, Moob.
It's impossible to really avoid that. I mean,
because it's literally the way to make the German. It's literally there to make the Soviets not just win the game immediately.
Yeah, I feel like we're confusing malice with
it's not necessarily explicitly malice. It's just trying to...
Well, no, it's some of the stuff that Mua said does sound like it is. They're doing it out of pure malice.
Yeah, then
it's
like that's what I think Fleet's more disagreeing with there.
Like it's not.
The game doesn't cover what the British were doing in fucking Africa, especially in Kenya and
I wouldn't call it callousness though, because it's not callousness.
It's not like Paradox is going, we're not going to touch upon the genocides that were happening worldwide because we want to whitewash the Second World War. And
honestly, being brutally honest, the Soviet purges are less politically sensitive than the Holocaust. Most purges or genocides are less sensitive than the Holocaust for Europe.
It's an uncomfortable truth, but it's right. It does have a bit of an effect of whitewashing the various atrocities they don't touch upon. I mean,
that's not an intentional thing, though.
Yeah, like we're not arguing that. Yeah, maybe they could have done this better. We're not, but they didn't. Then Paradox isn't sat there cackling with an armband, going, "Ah, yes, we are helping to clear the path for genocide again in the world by not including it in our grand strategy game about the Second World War." They're just not doing it. It's not good.
It's not them doing it out of malice, it's them going, you don't know enough about...
we've established, it's not no one's arguing they're doing it out of malice. It is just the fact that they would like to sell their game without touching upon the icky parts that make it hard to talk about. So they decide to dodge the question entirely, which is, fine on one hand to say, but as a business decision. But on the other hand, there is an impact in terms of like if you just simply let people just push it out of the way and ignore it entirely, it's kind of, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. It's a very questionable approach given the gravity of the material and what you're ignoring. Because, again, what was the explicit point of everything Germany was doing during the Second World War in this expansion that you are simulating by playing the game as Germany, right? And I think it's doubly problematic given that, there is surrounding Germany and German paraphernalia and Germany in World War II still lots and lots of neo-Nazis and people who like to dog whistle neo-Nazism, and it's the reason why like this kind you have like such an issue with like far right presence in games like this or games adjacent to it. I think it's as a company you almost have a moral responsibility to find a way to properly address that instead of just ignoring it.
I'm just looking at a comment Moose made in response. Spiteful has made the comment, it's not about politics, it's about having fun with a game. And Moose, by pretending to be a Nazi is problematic. By having fun by pretending to be a Nazi is problematic at best. No, you can play Nazi. You can play Nazi Germany without pretending to be a Nazi.
Yeah, and also
So you're not pretending to be Nazi Germany while you're playing the country that is a portrait of Hitler in the top left corner.
You can do that. Right, most people. Move. I'm going to point out most people prefer playing the Nazis because they get stupid gameplay buffs, not because they're Nazis.
Yeah, but it's also a case of, as a Nazi, no. As a woman, I can play Sniper Elite and play the counter sniper mode, where you play as a Nazi sniper. That does not make me a Nazi.
Mm-hmm.
That does not mean I sympathise with the Nazis. It just means I'm playing a Nazi counter sniper in a game.
You were always gonna if we are going to provide people with a scenario where, I enjoy driving my Tiger tank in War Thunder.
I wouldn't even say people who prefer to play as Nazis are suspicious.
That's really getting towards. Are we?
That's fair enough. It's just
fair enough. Like if it's a you problem. I mean, at that point we're saying are all reenactors therefore suspicious?
Right.
There are a lot of reenactors who are, to be fair.
Fleet, you chose the worst one there, I think, possibly.
But, I mean, I would argue that there is definitely a significant difference, though, from playing games where you're driving around in a tank or a first person, sniper, whatever, is a little bit different in terms of you are just playing as a soldier on the ground, and setting aside the problematic stuff as far as like clean war myths and Go and such, and the way that relates to certain games. That is kind of one thing where you are just a guy on the ground fighting on the front lines. But if you are playing as doing a geopolitical simulator in the way that like Hearts of Iron 4 is, where you are explicitly in control of every asset of as far as strategic and operational level of what Nazi Germany is doing in World War II, managing their economy, right? Fighting, figuring out how to support the logistics of fighting this war and such, conquering these countries. It's a little bit different because, again, the explicit reason why Germany was going after these countries was to create their living space so they could mass murder anybody who was undesirable. Slavs, Jews, homosexuals, anyone who's crippled. Anything that they deemed was undesirable. Right? Got to purge those. That's
we are all aware. We are. I like
why how they're the degree to which the Holocaust was integrated with their war economy itself. Right? It's a little bit different of a distinguishment, or trying to pull this apart when it's that kind of level of gameplay versus you as just the individual guy or tank crew or fighter pilot or ship captain.
I would argue
it's different. I think.
Hoy's not really very good at geopolitical politics either, and you're not really controlling this. It's more a case of this is the set path. You cannot deviate from it at all.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
It's not.
You don't actually have any power to choose anything.
Yeah, there's I feel like Hoy 4 is very much about the war and fighting the war, and by that I mean there should be, I think, for a game that covers the geopolitics behind it.
I mean, but fighting the war and the Holocaust are inseparable. They are linked at every level.
No, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, it's about moving divisions around on a map. It's not like yes, you are invading countries and stuff, but unless you get into a lot of the mods where it adds back in a lot of the geopolitics and factionalism and running the nation properly, the government is a pie chart, the leader is a funny man with a picture, and the division, and you're basically feeding manpower and equipment to divisions.
Because, for instance,
you're still managing an economy. You're still picking and choosing.
You're
really not managing.
You're not managing any economy.
You are also. There's also a whole aspect of the gameplay that is quite literally, explicitly built around how do I crush partisan actions and make sure that no one's rebelling in my territory. That I keep everything running smoothly to keep my economy going. I mean, I
think it's you stick a spy there, and that's it.
It's really, they really. I will admit, they really dropped a clanger with that one.
Like, technically speaking, you've also got the occupied territory. You can set basically what level of presence you have there.
Yeah,
but
like
beyond that,
yeah, like they really. I will admit, Phoenix does have a point there. They had an option to make things really interesting and weigh up the morality.
Well, I'm going to say that's not just for Germany, then, though.
I mean, it's true, it isn't, but it is also generally something that the reason why, the primary reason those mechanics have to exist is because, who was the one mostly occupying territory and dealing with partisans during World War II? I think this is, again, why it's kind of hard to separate this stuff out. This existed explicitly because, historically in World War II, Germany conquered most of Europe and then was dealing with partisans who were fighting back or also fighting each other, which,
if you want
would be nice if the game would address
If you want to talk about partisans, there's one other power two other powers that had to deal with a lot of partisans. The British Empire and the Soviets.
But what I would like to say quickly,
the British Empire had to deal a lot more with partisans because the various different places that were kept wanting to rebel or have their own independent or just that. I guess, right? I'm not even going to touch on China because China's China. Yeah,
yeah. But what I would like to say is that this is one of the points I actually thoroughly agree with Phoenix on, and it actually does open up a point to why he does have a wider point, because when Hoy added that system in La Resistance, they added a level of complexity and they started touching upon topics like that, and at that point I do have to start to go, well, if we're going to touch upon that and have a really detailed system for managing suppression and
is it detailed?
It's detailed enough that I go,
is it?
The counterpoint, they did try a much more detailed system. They got burnt for it hard. To the point where
you're not deciding brutality, Syndicus.
Yes, you are.
You're
you
not.
Absolutely are.
You are.
You're not.
You can decide how effectively you have to crush on dissidents versus being lighter on them to try and get loyalty up faster. I mean, there's a whole thing based around how brutal do you want to be? How many people are you?
It's how much presence is there?
No,
how
it's
many
not.
Civilians do you grab, pull out, shoot because of partisan action in the area?
Dragon. The reason you need more presence is to be more brutal. Like, if it's just the local police force managing things, you barely need anybody there to supervise it. If you're doing total control military governor, you've basically got to deploy a full division to start shooting people. Because you want to...
I understand. Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting.
Because that's... Yes, you're right. Basically,
it's not touching on any of that, though. Like, that's where the game still tries to hold back. It just says, this is how many troops you're deploying. Even though that's probably what they are doing, but that's not what the game is saying they're doing.
Well, no, but you can't just... you can't make that distinction.
It's tactically... I've seen enough games do it. It is tactically vague. Is it a good thing? But it is how games do it to get around situations.
Back to Moo's point about callousness and cowardice, where you're essentially, because you like as a designer, you have to understand implicitly that anybody who is even remotely familiar with what happened for partisans in World War II understands that is exactly what you mean when you do maximum occupation, right? It means you're going in and purging ghettos. It means someone gets a German soldier is shot somewhere, so 10 civilians have to be dragged out of their houses and put up in a wall and shot as well, or hung in the town square, whatever it happens to be.
Right,
that is implicitly what is being implied, and you are just saying as a game, like, it's just a level. You just click this and these percentages go, and that's all we're gonna do. We're not gonna touch on the deeper meaning of that.
Phoenix, I would argue
It is an explicit choice not to do that and to just say we're just not going to bother with that as a company. You can play this game. We understand people will see it that way and whatever. So there is a degree of, again, not malice, but there is a degree of we are not willing. We don't want to touch on what we are showing, even though we know we are showing that because it's impossible to avoid. I think that kind of, again, it's almost at every level because, again, of how deeply tied the Holocaust was to the German war effort.
So I will point out, if they were actively had a decreasing population in the state, I would definitely agree with you that they're touching on that. But by the sheer fact that you've got the main levels are basically civilian oversight, police force, secret police, military governor are the main ones.
I feel like
none of these actually do anything apart from decreased compliance gain and resistance and garrison requirements.
Yes, that's true, but the problem is that's a feature of gameplay rather than it. It still doesn't.
They could have, if they didn't want you to do these ones, they could have made it so it actively decreases population. Yeah.
Right, it's not like it's a fucking game, and games need fun game mechanics. And I'm sorry, but people don't play games to get lectured about shit they've heard about in school and they've heard about throughout most of the time on the planet.
So far, they've set a pretty good level.
Move 20 divisions around on a map. And because I want to move 20 divisions around on the map doesn't mean I want to go back into reading about the Holocaust every fucking time. Because quite frankly, it's depressing, and sometimes I just want to move divisions around a fucking map. The same reason you play EU4, and you sort of hand wave away all the shit that happens in colonialization, because fundamentally, it's a funny map to game, where you move divisions around a map.
I mean, that's actually a very good example, because look at how heavily Paradox is trying to revisit Europa Universalis, explicitly because of how massively they whitewashed colonialism in past games.
I don't think that is why they're looking at it. I think they're looking at it because EU4 is a very old game at this point, and they need to sell something new.
If you look at the dev diaries and how they talk about their approach towards colonialism in the new game, they are being very explicit that they are trying to massively change how they represent the process of colonialization, the indigenous societies that existed that they pretended did not exist in the past games. It was just unclaimed land.
You mean
no
Vicky 3?
Civilization.
You're talking about
No, I think they're talking about EU4.
EU4?
Vicky...
For the past 8 fucking years, that they can't do colonialism properly because it's an ancient fucking game engine and it can't process.
EU4 goes back to 2013, so we're now talking 12 years effectively.
Remember, it's essentially a modernization of EU3. It's on the same fucking engine, which is from 2006.
So, 2007. But yeah.
Just look at the map for North America now.
Like, part of the reason why Paradox does the stuff it does is because of either limitations or what.
And at some point, a game's got to...
EU5, sorry.
Yeah, EU5 is currently in development. I do know that.
Yeah,
but...
that's what I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Yeah. I knew
you were meaning EU5 and the difference to EU4.
Yeah.
What the?
But
Thank
it's
you,
just like at some level, game has to be a fucking game.
Like, it's important to bear in mind historical context, and I get that. We all get that. I mean, we're probably the ones who need it least, given that we are all fairly conscious people, very well aware of the stakes in which we partake. It's actually games that mainstream consumers deal with, I think, that need it more. So, for example, but grand strategy games, I feel like a lot of people who are playing grand strategy games are familiar enough with the source material to understand the circumstances in which they're partaking. And if they're okay with that, I think there's already a problem there that the game didn't create.
Because keep in mind, if this was such a problem, then Stellaris shouldn't exist because it's literally going to be doing bonuses for genociding entire species out of existence.
Mm-hmm. It's convenient.
Some people find that very questionable, but everyone kind of ignores it because it's aliens and this, events that.
Oh no, you can do it to humans.
Not historical. I mean, you can absolutely, but that's just Stellaris is its own beast of a game that That's even. I don't want to touch on that one. That's even more complicated. But
In the end, people just want to play a game. They're not really putting much political thought behind it. Because in that case, I would then probably be utterly massacred because I played Supreme Commander, where the UEF is a conquering entity that has annihilated tons and is now engaging in a war against religious zealots.
Oh, genociding the cybernetics. Can't forget that.
Yeah, but I think it's different versus doing it with a historical event. I think is where you really have to draw a line.
So
because at this point you are pretending certain parts of history didn't exist, right? Which
you're not pretending different parts don't exist.
They're just not. There's a difference between pretending and not addressing, which I think is a really key difference. It's a really key and important difference here. Paradox isn't pretending they didn't exist. They're just not addressing them. It's not like if they they're not saying this is Nazi Germany. It's fine. They're saying this is Nazi Germany. A lie of omission. That's not a thing.
Yes, it is.
No,
the lies of omission are a thing.
Are they actually?
But not in this case.
Are they actually? Oh.
Yes, that is actually it's a legal term.
Really?
Lying by omission is very much
lying by omission.
Wow, that's a new one to me.
But I would also argue it is not. I would also argue it's not a lie of omission though. Because
I would argue that if you go off these standards, you would never get anything fucking historical. Because you'll never get a TV show because about what they did to England for 200 years. You would never get a show about the Mongols because of what the fucking Mongols did. You never get a show about the Romans for what the Romans did.
I mean, a lot of shows dealing with Romans explicitly focus on their brutality.
Oh no, most ones are right. Phoenix, as someone who grew up in England.
I understand. Right. I've seen plenty of ones that don't. I'm just saying there is a very large movement for all kinds of media now to try and properly address this, which is why you see a lot more Roman documentaries try and address this. You see video game companies like Paradox with EU5 or Vicky 3 try and do a better job of approaching the topic of colonization. It's just recognized that, as we are in the 2010s and now 2020s, we have to do a better job of tackling these problems when we do represent these periods, because they are mostly inseparable. And
again, though, at that point, then why isn't no one complaining about the whole British problems in that period? It's it's primarily the thing is that people focus on the whole. They not that much though.
Dragon, we've changed the point. But my point is, at some point, you've got to disconnect it and go, this is entertainment. This is consumed so people can have fun. For the vast majority of sane people, reading about the Holocaust, or reading about the horrors of colonialism, or the dark heart of Africa, is not fun. It's rather depressing, to be honest.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I enjoy playing as the Empire, conquering areas. Does that mean I agree with how it's done? No. But I find it at least fun to give it a go.
You have to disconnect the entertainment from reality.
What Ismu says, if you don't want to be depressed, why would you play a game about World War II?
Because there's a lot of very interesting things about World War II that aren't depressing.
Yeah, but it's also
I think there's a certain point that you have to... There's a certain point you come to. It's like if I want to explicitly play World War II as Nazi Germany, how much should I have my eyes off of what Nazi Germany was explicitly doing in the war? Especially if you're doing it in a game like Hearts of Iron 4, where you are doing tactically managing not just where your divisions are on the front, but also logistics behind them, production on the home front, what kind of resistance suppression policies you have. That whole swath of what Germany was doing in World War II. If you are going to explicitly play as Germany, right, is it better to just pretend that none of that happened at all and we just continue to whitewash it? Or do you at least have, like you have with other events in the game, right, a pop-up, hey, by the way, you as fascist Italy occupying Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, Yekatat 17, you massacred 100,000 Ethiopians for, to suppress resistance fighters. Or, you Nazi Germany, by the way, you occupy Auschwitz in 1944. Here's what happened at Auschwitz, right? It doesn't have to be like a full explanation. It can be one of the because they have pop-ups for everything.
This sounds like you want Black Ice.
Does Black Ice do that? I haven't played Black Ice.
Yeah, Black Ice does stuff very similar to this, and it goes much more into the details of what you're meaning.
Yeah, Black Ice.
But also, on the other hand, though, Paradox realized most people can't play Black Ice or these sort of style things because it goes too in detail. It removes the game aspect.
Yeah, and we're acting like games like Hoi don't reference and point you towards other things that, like, if you want to know more about this,
go and look at this.
Yeah,
I mean, Moo, at that point, if we can't address things well, don't make a game. Well, then that just.
Then I'm sorry. Do we have to get rid of 90%?
At that point,
No,
Crusade.
90%. At that point, yeah. Why do we have a games industry about anything historical? In fact, if you want to go beyond that, then technically speaking, it goes further because a number of games are a reference to this but aren't made very well. So then you lose all those games out. Then maybe you should get better at making historical games. That's not how that works, though.
At that point, why should we be allowed games about modern social issues, like Detroit Become Human?
At this point, how much are you saying they have to do it better to the or they don't make it at all before you then realize you're then at
about a social issue pretending that it didn't exist in the first place? I feel like it's a different comparison to make. You know.
Well, no, the whole thing is.
I get it about the whole argument of we want to have these historical games. We want to be able to play things that from the past and have historical settings. I get that. I'm sympathetic to it. I just think there are certain topics where you really have to be careful with how you're approaching it. And a company like Paradox can say, we just simply don't want to touch on this issue at all. But we can't look at that and say, okay, well, that's just that's the moral high ground. No, it's like there is a certain act of cowardice in doing so and pretending that an historical event didn't exist. You have to. It's just an implicit.
No, it wasn't, Jandalord. It wasn't actually a question.
Statement. This is just spawned out of something entirely different, unfortunately. Which we can probably drop it because I feel like we're dragging this on. It's a depressing
I do feel. Yeah, I will point calling it cowardice. I don't think is the right thing either, though. Cowardice is a very particular thing, and I don't think this is that. It's knowing that you might be called a cowardice, but they know a vast majority of the player base, to be honest, probably doesn't need to know this or doesn't care enough about it. Or if they do, then they will look into it for a different thing. For the sake of their gameplay, to make things work a bit easier, it can either be referenced or not referenced.
I feel like having an event pop-up is not that complicated.
Well, no, it's not. But I will
the more
point
event
out, one of the things I do want to make a point of is I think this is less an issue about games and more an issue about public education.
Yeah,
it should be. I think this comes down to the point Moo has made, which is, I think, ideally, in a world where we have decent public education, we shouldn't even need to have this conversation because it should just be implicitly clear that I am playing as Nazi Germany. They are doing horrible shit, even if I don't see it.
Yeah.
That's the real. That's the real crux of the issue here.
Mark Harkness on the YouTube.
The fact that we don't live in that world is the real discussion that needs to be had here.
Well,
that we don't live in a world where the fact that you are playing as Nazi Germany doesn't just implicitly imply to the general populace what exactly is occurring and the historical connotations of either the uniform you are wearing, the tank you are driving, the ship you are sailing, the orders you are giving.
Yeah, so, I think it's actually really interesting.
Can I just quickly mention a point from the YouTube chat, Phoenix? Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Mark Harkness is saying, if video games and war games are your primary source of knowledge and understanding history, there's far worse issues. And of course, the cowardice would be where educators deliberately hide and dodge things, not when a game company overlooks it for ease.
Yeah, I think that is the. I think honestly that's the real crux of the issue here. The fact that we even need to have this discussion about whether or not games touch on things like this, if they're historical, when it really should be something that people should know about. Like if it's a niche area, like say medieval history or colonial history in Africa, I would absolutely agree. Let's have a pop-up, because that's not something that you cover in general history or in high school. Or for example, the one Phoenix said about Addis Ababa. That's a fantastic thing. I'd never heard of that. That's something that deserves a pop-up.
And I think this. Oh, sorry, I'll finish.
But the Holocaust is something that people should know about. It is not something that should ever be
It's actively
skipped.
taught in public schools in the UK.
But the thing is, Moo, this statement right here I have a problem with. Historical public education is much harder to solve than game development historical stuff because one is policy, one is a single company. Well, at that point, then I feel like we are directing our energy towards the wrong thing. Then,
Well, one thing I would point out is because World War II games and media has occupied a very privileged position in terms of what it needs to establish as a preamble in the last for the last like 70 years, because it's within living memory, right? It has been for the longest time. People understand implicitly what the war is about because plenty of people who fought the war are around. That is becoming less and less true by the day. I mean, for example, the last person in my immediate family who experienced World War II, my grandfather, he passed away earlier this year. So that human connection is gone. Like, when I have kids someday, hopefully I have kids, they will never have anyone to talk to who actually experienced the First World War or Second World War in person, right? And this has been a measured tick where, we have seen as the number of people who died in World War II, or who fought in World War II, experienced in some capacity, have died off, right? The increase in overall numbers of people who doubt the Holocaust existed or are explicitly neo-Nazis has increased because the number of people doubt what is taught publicly, because that experience is no longer present in everyday life. It's no longer an implicit preamble to anything about World War II.
At this point, we're talking.
Can I finish my point, please?
No, let Phoenix finish, because I've got a question for him afterwards. Then
it's its own difficulty to deal with, and so this is something we kind of have to think more about it going forwards. And when it comes to video games, I absolutely agree that people should be getting their primary knowledge about historical events from either reputable peer-reviewed books or historians or school itself, right? But the reality is, people are usually going to be exposed to that kind of thing after the fact. Lots of people's first exposure to these kinds of topics now these topics is just media they consume as kids. It's very easy as a kid to go on YouTube and your favorite YouTuber or streamer happens to be playing Hearts of Iron 4. You have an interest in Hearts of Iron 4. Now you want to play Hearts of Iron 4 or any other World War II game. And with these things will link, you get the interest of World War II from like let's say a Lesta game, like World of Tanks or World of Warships or whatever. And then you transition from that to Hearts of Iron 4 or any other strategy game, right? Or whatever. And so you get to this gateway, and that can exist entirely before you ever touch on World War II in class in a school, right? So that there is that aspect to keep in mind too. Not saying again, like
that's a very good point.
This is not an easy one answer topic to approach, but it is something we have to recognize it's becoming more of a problem.
One thing here, though. Give me a sec, Voxer, because I want to ask mine as well quickly first, because I did ask previously. How much of that? No, this is genuinely not trying to be rude, but how much of this is because you're an American?
In which regard?
The sort of thing of the more and more people believing Holocaust wasn't a thing, increase in neo-Nazis. Because I think it's very interesting to see this compare the difference from a European perspective. Personally, is this is a lot more prevalent in the United Kingdom and Europe. Like, we are taught this from like age 5 up. Like World War I and II, Holocaust is taught from primary school.
I don't think I've met a single person in my entire life, in real life, who has ever come out and said the Holocaust isn't real.
The scars are still very much more present in Europe, I feel, than America. And I wonder if this is genuinely not me trying to be rude or anything. I'm just genuinely curious. Is it because America was actually a lot more separated from World War II, whereas Europe wasn't?
So that could be. I have to admit, I don't have the best sample size because
it's a very good topic. It's a very good thing to discuss.
Just background, right? So in the United States, for most of the education is going to be decided more at a state or municipal level. As far as what's in the curriculum, it varies state by state because of how the country is structured, right? So different states will have different emphases based on their population makeup. So, for example, I grew up in the northeast of the United States, so we have lots of immigrants. We've always had lots of Jewish families. So it's like so Holocaust is almost as a topic is almost impossible to avoid. Like, we broach on it formally in school for the first time for my experience, it was in middle school. It was a language arts class actually rather than history. But language arts is frequently used to touch on social topics like this or things that are not explicitly just history and have another impact. So I don't, but that was my experience growing up where I am. I don't know if, say, someone who grows up in, say, Missouri or North Dakota or Seattle or somewhere like in Washington State, for example, would have the same experience. And I can't really claim to, because it just varies state by state. I'd have to ask around. As far as Holocaust denialism and neo-Nazism in general. Speaking as someone who has their foot in a lot of different ponds, because of my family background and the friends I have,
Mhm.
I would say it's something of an international issue.
Yeah.
Because even in
It's
Europe, where
tied
like
into. It's
Yeah,
tied.
I'm not
even
gonna
if it's
split,
not
I agree.
explicitly like a
If I may.
Yeah.
it didn't happen, it's
Yeah.
like one of those like
Yeah.
did it really happen at this scale, like that kind of
Yeah.
type of
If I may.
like what our role was in it, like that's a big issue.
Let
And
Phoenix finish first, Fleet.
Yeah.
like in Italy and France, it's still a significant issue. I mean, in the United States, it's even more of a problem because, like you said before, there's so many people who have almost no connection to the war in Europe. At most, someone in their family went over to Europe, or their neighbors or someone who immigrated after the war or something like that can happen. But for a lot of places, there's just no real firm connection, and that's kind of where this stuff breeds most easily. I'd even make the point that you will find a lot of Holocaust denialism in East Asia, right? Where they have absolutely no connection, and people, without that actual connection to what happened in terms of people who can actually say it, person mouth to mouth, right? This was my experience. The only source is, whatever you get in school, maybe a Western documentary you happen to catch, or if you're online. And in a lot of cases, those same sources can be entirely mixed or countered by other sources. I mean, the rise of the internet is also making this very problematic too, because it gives voice to not just legitimate sources of information, makes those easier to access, but it also makes a lot of misinformation or disinformation easy to access.
This ties into exactly what I was going to say, which is the real enemy here is the rising anti-intellectual movement. The rising anti-mainstream. That is what this is what it all comes back to: anti-intellectualism and how on the rise it is. And also, it's not just anti-intellectualism; it's anti-federalism, anti-governmentism, anti-big whatever-ism. Anything that the mainstream wants, we don't want. Anything they believe, we say is wrong. Because if they believe it, it must be wrong. They must be part of the wokerati, Illuminati, whatchamacallit, whatever this week's particular talking point is. If the mainstream thinks the Earth is round, it must be flat. If they think that that Russia is bad, Ukraine must be bad, etc., etc., so on and so forth. And this is the real problem. Anti-intellectualism and contrarianism are the biggest threats, I feel, to modern Western society.
Yeah, I would agree with that very strongly.
I'll disagree with you. It's not. That's a symptom, not the issue. The issue is for the past 20 to 30 years, the intellectuals that have been in the public eye have been extremely disingenuous. And they've told lies that people that are actually readily visible to most people, that you can see, hey, you're lying. And once one of that group starts lying, you question the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, it's in the intellectual, like the idea of them, how they appear in people's public conscience, has been abused and taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially around America and the fucking post 9/11 era.
I would even say it's not even the first time that's happened in the United States. I mean, there was a big loss of public faith in the United States government during the Vietnam era, and especially with a lot of these scandals that broke out in the 70s and such. It took a while to rebuild that afterwards through the 1980s and 90s. But that's actually where, historically speaking, a lot of legislation for government oversight into intelligence services and such, a lot of it stems from that era and that backlash and that loss of public faith in the government. Because otherwise, what the CIA, for example, could get away with prior to, say, the 1970s was significantly more than any time since, which is why a lot of the CIA conspiracy theories nowadays are really, really funny if you understand how the CIA actually works and what they can actually get away with.
Yes, it's like they wished that a lot of the things they had planned had actually worked.
You get the point.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. I mean, this is the thing. It's
I
something
wouldn't even
that
limit it to the US as well, because Europe has had plenty of.
Oh yeah.
Farage.
Well, not even just that. Most major governments have had various different instances over the past 80 years, which has decreased basically people being able to believe in what their leaders are saying.
Yeah, which is it is a point of bad governance too, right? Because it is the response. It falls on the governments. It's when you have great power, you have. I'm going to use that line. With great power comes great responsibility.
It's true, though.
As somebody in position of political power, you have a great responsibility to be honest and do the right thing, and not try and cheap out or do things for personal goals, or simply because you feel like it is your political end goal to do it, versus what is actually best for the people, or what is actually your job and the right thing to do. If you want to talk about the United States in this post 9/11 politics, right? This is a very good point, because frankly, I'd make the point that the United States should have had to hold itself to the highest standard as essentially the world's sole superpower, right? There's a level of responsibility that comes with that, and the degree to which we kind of pissed it away in the 20 years that followed was really, really, really damaging to geopolitics as a whole. Not even just, and this is again not even just the American position in it, but because of the position America did occupy, the position of so much of our allies, right? And it helped create so much breeding ground for the deliberate misinformation campaigns that are being waged by revisionist powers. And I hope that's not. Don't know how political I can really get here, because this is dry dock. But,
I know. I mean,
yeah, but there are the kind of the stories we tell ourselves, but the historical underpinnings of the legitimacies of modern states and narratives and political leanings in states is very much something that is a political football. It is something that states wage war over, and try and change the history around explicitly, or confuse the history.
I know.
This is very much the case in Eastern Europe, which is part of, when you get back to it, kind of part of the reason of why making sure you properly approach the Holocaust, grim as it is important, because it is something where information warfare is actively being waged over it, for political end goals of powers with hostile intent, this is where it's like we're coming into an era where misinformation is so much more easily distributed, and is so willfully distributed that we almost have to find ways of better approaching these topics. Otherwise, we're going to be in deeper and deeper shit as time goes on. Pardon the French.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we're seeing. Luckily, anti-intellectualism has. Well, seemingly is being resisted in Europe, but unfortunately, it's basically almost won the jackpot in the United States of America.
Yeah, it's a staggering problem here.
And at that point, well, no, I mean, by won the jackpot, I mean, look at what's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't mention it by name, but you all know what I mean.
The anti-vax movement.
No. That's not what I'm on about.
That is. I mean, it's very much a symptom of the same problems, though.
Yeah. The victory I'm referring to is a victory.
Don't touch. Just don't. Because I know Sierra is waiting there and could potentially very easily shoot you down. So.
I know.
So.
But anyway, as I said.
I also. Never mind. Right. Go on, Fox, and I'll add my bit. Then Fleet can do whatever he's doing.
It's a case of, I've said the anti-vax movement sort of push what into a microcosm of it. Because there's a very good argument that what's happening in America is a skeletal version of what happened there.
Skeletal? I mean, also, what's happening in America is expanded rather than skeletal.
Yeah, a bunch of people lied for personal gain, which created distrust that other people lied for personal gain for.
Keep in mind, this all started from talking about how Britain should get a DLC in Hoi, because they haven't had a DLC since the game came out.
Aren't you glad we go down these rabbit holes that we do?
Ramblings, everybody!
Oh god, how many hours did that ago?
About an hour.
Oh my god, we just...
I thought it'd be a good idea to bring it back to... Because
how did we get here? Where have we gone? Who are you?
Germany got a DLC before Britain did, and it didn't need it.
I'm sorry, no, Germany got its second DLC.
Yeah. Before Britain got it, yeah.
Oh god.
It still bugs me, the bloody Middle East getting their DLC before Britain does again. It's not. Alright, I should clarify. It's not just Britain that I want a DLC for. I want a complete redevelopment of the Commonwealth. Because some of the nations I feel have some potentially really interesting stuff.
who in the Middle East is getting trees again?
Iran, Afghanistan, and some content for India.
I can see Iran, but
actually literally go and take a look. The graveyard of
I'm completely
empires.
confused about because like they're just not relevant in World War II. Like
They
I
just
can
sit
see
there.
Iraq is hugely relevant.
No, right. So India, the focus tree focusing on the struggle of Indian independence, offering historical paths, including the revival of the East India Trading Company,
Which is fact.
as well as freedom for the princely states and the democratic formation of Pakistan and Bangladesh. Iran is the potential great power of the region, hemmed in by political imperial pressure of the Soviet Union and British Empire, allows players to resist imperial incursions that historically weakened Iran, offering new potential for a new and modern Persian Empire or Islamic revolution at the heart of Asia.
Oh boy.
Iraq, take control of the British client state and chart your own path, choosing to side against your overlord, managing competing ethnic and religious factions, and develop strategically important oil fields. Afghanistan, the graveyard of empire, isolated from the wider war, offers many alternative paths. Continue the historical path of neutrality and isolation, or choose the road of rapid industrialization, becoming a budding new power in the mountains of Central Asia.
Afghanistan.
This is their official page.
I feel Paradox. You don't do yourself any favors, for God's sake. Fucking hell. Where did we?
Oh my god.
How did we get here? Just. Who?
The need to find more content.
But they could have had right.
You know, it'd be really nice, actually. I don't know if they finally solved this problem, but if they actually went back and made sure that all the past DLC stuff and everything and achievements updated so it actually reflected the point at where the game is now instead of leaving like a whole bunch of stuff broken. Because I remember that was an issue last time I played. Oh, it was a continuous, and it had always been an issue, but it was still an issue last time I played, which was several years ago.
Yeah, they've done a lot of that. They've done a lot of that. They've merged. They've really worked on trying to make sure everything clicks together quite nicely.
That's nice. I always remember there was always messes with the country with the tags on each province as to what country would get like cores and wouldn't.
Yeah,
it's
because what they do now is they release DLC and they release a patch for the base game as well that goes with it, and so they basically make sure that everything is as it should be.
Gotcha. Yeah. I remember also one of the most annoying things was like, you know, if you puppeted Yugoslavia for any reason, and you weren't the Axis or the Allies, whenever they went down their focus tree, they would automatically jump out of your puppet. They would no longer be your puppet in your faction. They would just jump into the Axis or the Allies, and it's like, you.
All right. Okay. Certain nations can still do that. Like in one of our games recently, Hungary randomly joined the Allies, got into war, then randomly left, and it's like, excuse me?
Goodbye.
How did you do this? Annex countries out from under your feet.
Oh yeah. Oh, that happened in the game we're going to be playing in a minute.
That's how we got started to this fleet. Also, Foxo might not be able to attend. She said.
No.
Mother of God.
Well, that is bad because that's Sweden and we need them. But
I know we can't. Oh, Mayday.
Who else is going to give steel to Germany?
Man overboard.
She's not giving steel to Germany.
Oh no, we're all just staring at Germany, going, when are they going to hit me? Because I'm Russia, and I'm sat there going, I've restored the Tsars, and I'm really not happy about this, because
like hell
you are. Should not be worried. You should not worry about Germany. You should be worrying about their northern neighbour, because I want your land, bitch.
So Fleet's a bit of context, Fleet's playing the Soviet Union, and Foxo is playing, the Swedish Empire.
Soviet Union? I think you are mistaken, sir.
Soviet Union?
I think you are mistaken, sir.
You are you're just a discount Soviet in disguise.
I'm the Russian Empire.
Where did you even find this guy?
In a pub in Soho.
So
hey look, it's more realistic than any of the other Russian exiles.
You're not saying much there.
No, it's really not.
Also, admittedly, because we've got both Cindy and Mep playing Germany, so they're genuinely having a internal Germany-type power struggle.
Oh yeah, they are.
One's wanting to do one thing, the other's wanting to do the other. One department is insisting on the superiority of Wunderwaffe.
Yeah, there's literally
threes and fours work.
There's literally an internal German power struggle, and I'm just sat here in Russia going, okay, you guys keep squabbling.
From latest intel reports, they're planning to replace one of their members is trying to replace all tanks in their army with super heavy tanks.
Please do that. Like my T-3485s will have lunch.
Yeah, that's. Well, I guess it is some kind of
100
level
ton,
of simulation for
100
Germany.
tons or bust.
Oh no, they want to go for Land Cruisers, which is worse.
Well, no, they want
Where are
to do
you
both, I
going to
think.
drive them? How are you
East
getting
on
them over bridges?
the steps of Russia call to them, apparently.
Oh my god.
This is
They're gonna
see
drown
this
in
is
Ukrainian mud.
yeah. See, look. This is this just very quickly. This highlights one of the things that, I'm all for historical accuracy, but this is one of the things that OI4 is quite good at. You just have the insanity that creeps in, and it can be hysterical.
I don't know. The naval superpower that was the Ethiopian puppet of Japan, where Ethiopia agreed to be subject to the Japanese in exchange for them getting a battleship, and we end up giving them the battleship Mutsu and help build them a fleet.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
It wasn't great for Italy. They were very confused. Of what do you mean Japan's now involved?
Oh, we have fun here. We really do.
Oh my god.
I like to think we have fun.
The Ethiopian paths for if they get subjugated are nuts.
Weird. Yeah, they're weird.
They can either they can flee to Japan, where they become a Japanese puppet and build a giant navy. They can flee to the Scandinavians, and they end up then basically fomenting massive rebellions throughout Italy and them, and also get super secret spy agency. The traditional one of fleeing to Britain and hey, Britain, kind of poke them a bit, please. And then America of, yeah, come at us, Italy. You know you want to.
Yeah, this. But anyway, all that aside, very quickly. So after a very short section of questions that lasted an hour, and then an hour on one of the deepest and most philosophical discussions I think we've ever had on Rambling.
I did that wrong, didn't I?
Yes, you did. But this is what I love about running this show.
Bleh.
Eto. Bleh. Anyway, yeah, this just highlights how much I love running this show, because we can do questions, we can do deep debates, and then we can come back and laugh at each other, and we can do it all in one show. And I love it. And I will never stop running this because it just.
And then we murder Fleet in strategy games.
Yes, and then Fleet gets his teeth kicked in. I am the punching bag. Sierra loves his Belgian brigade. Sierra, leave the Belgians where they are.
Give me a second to because I have the perfect answer to that.
Leave the clogs where they are. You do not need the clogs.
But the Belgian armored brigade pops up. Drives on Berlin.
I'm sorry, but I don't know what the Belgian designers were smoking, but they basically said, "Oh, you know, we got this tankette. Yeah. You got this gun. Yeah. What if we put the gun on a mount that could pivot and put a machine gun either side of it? In the tankette. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea." And then they just...
What could possibly go wrong? Yeah.
I love the Belgians. Oh my god, the Bushmaster. It's the CBRT with the Bushmaster. That looks so goofy. Why is it off to one side of the turret? Oh.
The rest of the party would freak Cindy.
Oh,
but
that's just.
Don't realize it.
Okay.
Honestly, I would.
Are those front lights on the scimitar and where its axle is look a lot like it's nervous?
Yes, it's like, oh, I don't know what you... Zoinks, like, Zoink Scoob, I'm going up against the T-50... Hang on one second. Like, Zoink Scoob, I'm going up against the T-55 and I don't have my Rarden cannon. I don't know if this Bushmaster will hurt it, Scoob. I don't know why I was shagging that.
No, please, you got it wrong. It looks like it's just seen an APFSDS flying towards it.
I'm in take. What is that? No, what is that?
There can always be weirder.
What is that? What is... It's like two balls and a bong on a banjo. What?
The thing is, I've seen Stranger, so
Oh.
no, it kind of makes some sense to me.
Oh my god, Fleet's losing it. well, I already a 30mm. Is that just Moo? Is that them asking how much armament we can put on this tank, and then someone said yes?
Jordanians apparently going, yeah, just give us everything.
Oh, that's just right. Okay, before I lose my mind. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming. I hope you've all enjoyed. Now, unfortunately, we're missing some of the people for Hoi 4's game, specifically one of the major players, that being
I can see about
Foxo, and it wouldn't be fair to really go without her. So
she might. She might be able to attend. We don't know. I'll see about bugging her a bit.
So, thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Phoenix, for a thoroughly informative series of question answers and an actually excellent debate that I thoroughly enjoyed having and I think was well worth for having. And it's out there on the internet as well. We're doing our part to fight anti-intellectualism. I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part. I'm doing my part too. It's just.
Right.
I don't like what that implies about the rest of us, but
I'll get the frying pan.
we're running out of manpower.
I'll get the frying pan to beat him over the head with.
Anyway, thank you everyone for coming. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye for now.
So long.